We can talk a little bit more about that later, but first let's
Sure.
get into Cowboy Bebop. Now, where is this project right now? Because it was in the news recently. As in terms of Keanu saying, well, it's a $500 million script, and no one wants to take that kind of a risk right now. Is that true? What's really going on there?
I think I don't speak for him. I think I read the interview, and I think throwing around the term $500 million is more of a way to be funny. It is a very expensive movie. I mean, it's a big movie. It's certainly not $500 million. I think that was more of just a attempt, just a way to throw on a large number. We have an extraordinary script by Peter Craig. We are it's in active development. Everything is moving forward. I think people probably misinterpreted what he said, and it might have caused a little bit of a stir, but it shouldn't cause any alarm to anybody.
So it's not like now the movie isn't being made because Keanu said that, and then
Absolutely not. And I know that wasn't his intent. I think, again, I don't speak for him, but I think he was there doing a junket for another movie. I know he gets asked about this a lot because obviously it's a very important title, but it might have been just don't ask me any more questions about Bebop. I think that might have been it. So
yeah, that stands to reason.
People shouldn't read into it, and it was picked up a lot in the Japanese press, and they kind of misinterpreted the $500 million phrase. That's kind of a colloquial phrase that we use when how expensive? Oh, it's a $500 million. So I think it was just misinterpreted. So I wouldn't read anything into it.
Right. I think in history there's been one $500 million movie.
One $500 million movie, yeah.
that then went on to make $1 billion. So
exactly. I will say this: it's very, the script it's very big. I mean, it is. Bebop hops around planets, and it's very exciting. So it is a very big movie, but it's certainly well within studio's ability to make this movie. So that's not scary.
Right, exactly. Now, so what can you tell us about the film itself? It's been mentioned that it kind of centers around the story arc of the first episode or two, with the red eye drug and Vicious and all that. That's been talked about, but I haven't actually heard anything concrete. So what can you tell us?
Again, I have to be pretty cautious here on what I can say. But it does center around Spike, Vicious, and Julia. It does tell the main thematic story of the anime series. The series has lots of standalone episodes, and then they have I think it's over 7 episodes. They kind of have the story arc of Julia, Spike, and Vicious, and the Red Dragon's path, and that's certainly something that we concentrate on. So
okay,
it's not. I would say it's not an origin story. It's definitely sits well comfortably within the anime as we know it. So it's for fans of the series. I mean, when I read it the first time, I felt so completely comfortable because I knew these characters very, very well, and Peter captured their essence and their personalities just perfectly. And so it was really as a fan, it was really exciting for me to read it because I felt very comfortable with these characters. So what we also have to do then, as filmmakers, is to open it up to wider audiences as well. We need to make it just as inviting for them too, and so that's something we're very conscious of, is to make sure that it invites really all audiences in that might not be familiar with the characters.
So, can you tell us what characters are actually in the script? Like who's in there and who's not?
I guess all of them.
Even Ed and Ein, they're in there?
Yes.
Really? Huh. I think the common wisdom was, there's no way they're going to try and fit those characters in there.
Well, it's funny. They're comic relief, which is really necessary. I mean, for the Bebop crew is very funny. I mean, Jet is hilarious. He doesn't mean to be, but he is. And, Spike is just in his own way, but it is really those two characters that add some fun to it, because at the end of the day, it is a very lighthearted, fun adventure. It is not super serious, and I think that's what's exciting about it. And it's also very, the other character in it is the jazz, and I think that the jazz is still extraordinarily important because it has that tempo still, which the series did. Which is, of course, Bebop is a jazz term. It was based off of that. So that's still very much present, and that's also a real character. And the ship is a great character as well. It has a personality all its own, which is fun. Kind of like the Millennium Falcon, it has all these quirks that that are exciting.
Yeah. That was actually my next question, was about tone, and exactly how this was sort of approached, because the show has moments of deadly seriousness.
Yep.
Specifically the episodes you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you lose it, if you sort of get lost in the super seriousness of it and forget about the comedy aspect of it, the movie could just be deadly boring.
It's really funny. There are some lines in it, and a lot of the humor in the anime series centered around their quest for food.
Yeah.
They're very, very bad bounty hunters. I mean, they might get they might get the bounty, or, they might get the mark, I guess, but they never get the bounty. And so they're not good at it. And I think that's a lot of the humor. And there's definitely some extraordinarily funny jokes in this. And what was neat, we communicate obviously very closely with Sunrise and the creators of it. They give us notes on it, and we're creatively very, very in sync. A lot of the humor didn't translate, when we do the translation into the Japanese, so they can read it. A lot of the things that we thought were funny, they didn't understand. So it was really, it is a lot of this humor, we had to kind of explain to them in a different way. But it has that playfulness that the series did. At the same time, it is also very, very serious. I mean, there's revenge, it's betrayal, there is death. I mean, it is even though it takes place in space and, kind of a fantasy, it is certainly serious. I mean, these are real people. There's no aliens, so this is not that far removed. These are actually all humans, even though they might be on Mars.
Right. Yeah. Bebop didn't really have any alien characters in it that I can remember.
Yep.
So in terms of the cliched pitch, because everybody says, well, there's always the cliche pitch is, this movie is this successful movie plus this successful movie.
Yeah.
What is that pitch for this movie, do you think? It's a toughie.
I'm trying to remember how I described it, because I had to do this through 2 years ago or whatever. What did I describe it as? I almost want to go back and look at my notes. Maybe I'll get back to you on that. But
that's fine.
It was, what is nice about it is that people know Bebop, so we didn't. And there's been a lot of things that have been kind of in. We can't say it's Firefly, but better. It's got to be. It's the other way around. So because this was a very influential one. It was also consciously made as a Western. So it was. It had a lot of Western influences into it. I can't remember what we described it as, but it is, it's unique. I'll give you a little funny story. When we first met, actually, I think it was the second time we met with, Watanabe-san and Nobumoto-san who are the director and writer of it in Japan. Literally, they were describing when they pitched it to Sunrise the first time, and literally their pitch was bounty hunters in space. That was it. Yeah, so it was that simple. Bounty hunters in space.
Interesting. Yeah, when you were talking about the tone of it, the first thing that popped into my head was The Fifth Element, in terms of being sort of a kind of a comedy, space, action, adventure kind of a thing.
The Fifth Element, I would say, I don't mean this derogatorily, but that's a little farcical. I mean, it is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little over the top. This is not over the top. The adventure. There is a lot of action, obviously, but it is not crazy, and it isn't slapstick. I think The Fifth Element also kind of had. Maybe that was just because of Bruce Willis. Was a little bit it was a little bit silly. I think it meant to be.
That's a very silly movie.
Yeah, and I mean, the anime series is silly, but we don't make it silly just to be silly. I mean, it has to. I think the comedy in it has to serve a purpose, and I think it does. Right.
There's no sort of meta, sort of satirical elements. In other words,
no.
Yeah, I don't think the source material has that in it. So.
No, the source material doesn't. And in a lot of anime and manga, there is just a notion of silliness. It's in it. I mean, it's almost in every manga. Even the most serious ones always have silly moments where boys are crying and scream. And that's also in Bebop. There's a lot of those moments, but that doesn't really translate. That might be fine for anime fans, but the wider public's not going to understand it. So it's not critical. Those things aren't that important.
Yeah, totally. So from a production design standpoint, what can you tell us about the way the thing's going to look? I'm assuming there's a ton of concept art and stuff that's been drafted up.
I can't. I can't actually. It's not. I don't think it's at that stage yet. So I'm from. I'll say this: just going from the script, it is very. These places are. It's Mars, but these are kind of decrepit civilizations that are kind of. It's our civilization that is. As it had to extend out into the solar system, and it's not doing that well. So it's a lot. It's pretty junky. It's very moody. It is noir, kind of like, obviously like the anime. But no, there isn't, let's just say there's no production designer yet. So we actually haven't nailed down into that yet, but just reflecting on the script, it is our civilization transplanted to other planets, just as we would have built them, or had built them on Earth. And it's in a state of decay, just like, I think fictionally there's not that many people left in the world. I think they were all pretty much wiped out. And so it's kind of the stragglers of humanity that are out there. And that's why, the law enforcement has turned really towards, the cowboys to kind of be that last leg of law enforcement and order.
Right. Okay. Okay, interesting. So it sounds like that's pretty much the long and short of what you can actually tell us about this movie.
Probably. I will... when stages when we can, I'm sure everybody would be very happy, and I know, every producer and everybody involved in this, is obviously very, very aware of the play, how it fits in the fan community, and when we can share things, I know that we will, because we really like and appreciate keeping them informed in it, and it's the only reason we're doing this. I mean, we're doing this because we care about it, and we know that a lot of other people care about it too.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of the likeliness of this thing being made, now you're an experienced producer. You know that 1 out of every 8 billion movies actually gets made. What do you think obviously you're going to tell me 100%, but what are the odds on this one? Because there's whenever you see a project like this getting talked about, the way it's being talked about, I think the general assumption is this thing is not going to see the light of day, among the fans anyway. Is that obviously... I'm not gonna. I can't lie and say I will know that Fox, when Fox gets behind a project, they seriously get behind it, and they have not let up in their desire for this from day one. And it is a very long process. I mean, one of the things that this is a very big movie, and it's an important movie. So we have to find the right director, and directors that can handle this type of movie in this scale. There's not that many of them, and they're booked. They have Pirates of the Caribbean 4 to make, and they have all these movies that are in front of this. So we need to find the right creative team. We're just not going to take any creative team. So it does take time. But that said, when we're all completely committed to it still, and so is the studio. So it is a very long process, and that's just unfortunately how it works. But again, I'm not a sage, but we're all still confident that it's going to go forward. Do you personally have like a dream team in mind? It's okay.
Mark Forster.
Okay. Interesting.
Mark Forster. We have to. This is what we have to do. I mean, we have to conceive of a director's list and talk to directors and all that. And what is neat about it is that there's always some great ideas that we never considered in the first place. And I know that there. So I'm gonna bet that it's a household name at the end of the day. But the District 9 is an example of a movie that built a director. Kind of from nowhere, and now he is offered everything. So it's, whenever this happens, we might not yet know who that is going to be or who that right person is, because it is important to find the right person, not just the available director, but the right director.
Right. Please don't get Christopher Columbus.
Okay.
That's just from my heart.
I don't have a say in the matter.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So nobody, just kidding.
Don't blame you when it all goes south. Okay, so